Amazon's Rings of Power essentially has two camps of people, those who treat it like it's the Antichrist, and those who believe it's the next Citizen Kane. And the truth is, Amazon's Rings of Power is just okay. It's a solid 6 to 7, maybe 8 if you're still getting your sense of taste back after COVID.
And honestly, I don't know who I find more annoying, the cheerleaders or the haters.
The haters like to claim that their biggest issue is that the Rings of Power doesn't follow Tolkien's work like they've never seen a film adaptation of a book before,
but a lot of their criticisms seem to have this veil of racism about it.
In a world with talking trees, wizards, and whatever Gollum is, they draw the line at a dark-skinned elf. But they say that Tolkien's work was supposed to reflect feudal Europe, so anything other than a Snow White cast breaks the immersion.
And even if Tolkien would have rather burned the original Lord of the Rings manuscript than see a black dwarf queen, I still think the representation does a lot of good. It's easy for me as a middle-aged white guy to say representation doesn't matter, because for my entire life, the media that I've consumed is full of characters that look like me.
Those who push back against Amazon's Rings of Power might not understand what it means for other people. If there's just one 13-year-old black girl that feels empowered by the dwarf queen, then that's a net positive.
But then there's those cheerleaders that blow all this way out of proportion. They either fail or refuse to see that this is just some ploy by Amazon.
There was probably some bean counter who found out if there was a ratio to one dark-skinned guy to every 10 whiteys, X more viewers are going to watch. I doubt that Jeff Bezos had some altruistic motive or wanted to promote a more equitable casting with Rings of Power. It's all about the money. If audiences like clubbing baby seals, Galadriel would be walking around in a fursuit suit right now.
So while sending actors hate mail over a role they play is way out of line, the actors really are just pawns in a larger chess game. Next, the haters seem hellbent on nitpicking every Rings of Power episode.
People went on and on about Galadriel's slow-motion horseback riding scene like it was the entire episode, and recently it seems like there's been an uptick in this sort of criticism that centers mostly around women. After the third She-Hulk episode, the internet would not stop talking about She-Hulk twerking. By the comments alone, you would have thought that She-Hulk was giving a lecture to young girls about how they can make 6 figures on OnlyFans, but no, it was a 30-second post-credit scene that was supposed to be funny. It's hard not to pick up on the misogynistic overtones with that sort of nitpicking.
But those staunch defenders of Rings of Power need to address its many flaws.
There are some weird choices like Galadriel jumping into the open sea, and some of the dialogue seems so cheesy that it seems like it was ripped straight from The Young and the Restless.
There are legitimate issues with Rings of Power, but let's not pretend that each one is an absolute deal breaker.
And I know there's something wrong with the Rings of Power haters because of how much energy they spend on it. When I'm watching the previews in a theater and something looks lame, I'll turn to my friend and tell them how the movie looks stupid, but I don't go online and comb the internet for every teaser, trailer, and press release. It basically escapes my mind until I see some ad for it while scrolling on Reddit.
Sure, I might hate check the box office numbers now and again, but that's about it. And if you were super stoked about this show, it makes sense that you would seek out that stuff.
When there's a game that I'm super excited for, you better believe that I'm reading every article or looking for concept art to help build the hype.
But those hardcore Rings of Power critics seem to let the hate consume them.
On the forums, they claim that it's a place for free speech, but I still don't understand why put so much energy into something that you don't even plan on giving a chance.
Honestly, the Rings of Power haters are so ridiculous, I wouldn't be surprised if Amazon is actually paying people to post hateful comments.
It's 2022, shows don't make money like they used to. Now it's all about the buzz surrounding a show, the articles, the videos, forum posts. Jeff Bezos in its infinite wisdom found a way to turn an incredibly mediocre show into one of the most talked about pieces of media in the last couple years. You just need two polar opposite sides screaming at one another and you have a recipe for success. But to the true haters of Rings of Power, I think a lot of their issues stem from the fact that the original movie trilogy was released 20 years ago. They probably watched it at a young age, grew attached, and now have a hard time accepting the changing media landscape. And if that's the case, then I've got some bad news for you. Once you hit 30, you are dead to Hollywood. They don't care what we think anymore. It's all about what kids age 10 to 20 think. And this is a generation that does appreciate diversity in casting. And honestly, Rings of Power is probably needed to keep Tolkien's work alive and relevant for today's world. The world just doesn't want to see another 3-hour movie that centers around like 6 white dudes. But that doesn't mean you can't hate on Rings of Power. Hate on Rings of Power for being a soulless corporate cash grab devoid of all creativity and vision. Don't attack the Black Dwarf Queen, attack her beardless face. And for those of you who are just fawning over Rings of Power, go expose yourself to some better media. Rings of Power is okay to good, but not incredibly amazing. Probably the best thing about Amazon's Rings of Power is that it reminds us that a show can exist and just be okay. It doesn't have to be all or nothing.